Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, new county council sworn in, same old county executive. What can be expected in 2023? Governor Hogan bans TikTok from state government internet networks. Will productivity improve in Baltimore City? And according to the Washington Post, the Maryland Republican Party commits seppuku over and over again. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Secretary of the Maryland Republican Party, Mark Uncapher, and civic activist, Cary Lamari. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. This past Monday represented a transition to new political leadership in Montgomery County as the new and expanded county council was sworn in. The 11-member council has a majority of women in leadership positions. As County Executive Mark Elrich commented when he was sworn in for his second term, when I first broached the idea of expanding the council from 9 to 11 members, I don't think any of us imagined that this could be the result. Cary, despite the narrowness of his primary victory, Mr. Elrich easily won re-election in general, and in part because of his aggressive stance to fight COVID during the pandemic. He stated that his goals this term are to produce more affordable housing, combat climate change, and expanding equity. He did not discuss, although he did mention it as an accomplishment, that he expanded funding for education during his first term, but during his term, test scores have continued to plummet, not just because of COVID, but for other reasons as well. How successful will Elrich be in reaching these goals?
It's an ambitious agenda. I don't know. I mean, now that we've approved Thrive, you can forget the affordable housing because I don't think that the mechanics are there to allow for affordable housing. With respect to education, you and I both know that the curriculum is governed by the school board. So how much Mark's influence can be, I don't know. A lot of change needs to occur there. And now he's got to deal with an 11-member county council that is really across the spectrum. Some are aggressive and some not so much. And we also have some fiscal conservatives on the council as well. So we're going to have to see what goes on with Mark and whether he's able to achieve his ambitious agenda.
Well, Mark, I'm going to do the other Mark Uncapher, newly elected council president Evan Glass. He echoed many of the county executive's agenda points in his own speech. Glass's priorities are health and housing, transit equity, environment, and economic development. That's kind of all standard progressive aspirations, particularly expanding economic development. We've heard that for 30 years, and they're still trying to chase that cat. And affordable housing, which there are applause lines, but harder to accomplish in reality.
Well, as Cary said, I drilling down on this, there are trade-offs to public policy that if you move in one direction, you can obviously create problems on the other side. So transit-oriented housing has an advantage on an environmental side, but it also creates more expensive housing. And that's one of the kinds of challenges. And I think in the early stages, it's understandable to express the aspiration. The devil is in the details of understanding precisely how you get there in a way that does not compromise other priorities as well.
May I interject one thing here? Bear in mind, we've got 43,800 housing units approved in the pipeline. They haven't moved forward because, hey, there's just isn't the market for that. Developers are just not moving forward. And then when I said the mechanics are not there for Thrive, affordability. If you inherently make the land cost more expensive, what's the end result? Certainly not affordability.
Well, Cary, I mean, you touched on not only that topic, but also the diversity of the new members of the county council. And many in the media have lumped the newly elected female council members under, the banner of girl power. but aren't there some striking dissimilarities between the 6 new representatives?
Oh my gosh, striking similarities?
Dissimilarities.
Absolutely, that's what I was trying to say. You've got across the spectrum. You've got the aggressiveness of Kristen Mink and how she pushes things forward. She doesn't take no. She just goes right at it. If she has to protest in the front steps of the county council against her colleagues, she's not afraid to do that. Then you've got the pensive, deliberate decision-making like Lori Ann Sales and, the fiscal conservatism of Marilyn Balcom, who I liken to similar to Marilyn Praisner. I think she's got it on the ball here. When she makes a decision on something, she's thought it through. Now, we kind of disagree a little bit on housing, but, she's on the right track.
Well, Marilyn Balcom, of course, was a graduate of Leadership Montgomery class of 2000, the greatest Leadership Montgomery class. So you know that she was well schooled in these ideas. But there are other people who suggest that within a matter of months, all of the new members are going to be corrupted into the same groupthink that dominates the Stella B. Warner building.
You may be right. Public safety, our police have taken it on the chin so often and so long. You have a couple of existing, like Will Joanda, if he can sink his teeth into like-minded people like Kristen Mink, we may end up seeing a different police department than we have today. Hopefully, wiser heads will prevail, but we'll see.
Well, there's diversity. You put your finger on kind of a key point, which is that there's the diversity of sort of identity and gender, but there's also the diversity of having different points of view and thought. And it is sometimes a mistake to assume that because people share a particular, again, gender or race or ethnicity, that therefore everybody's going to think alike. That's certainly not true. And as this council goes forward, you're going to reflect the fact that people have different opinions, different approaches. They may share the same objective and the same policy aspirations, but they have a different appreciation of what the trade-offs are to be able to get there. And I think that's something we expect to see. It's also something we got with the larger council, which is that I think as the county has gotten larger, and the communities are now going to be better served by having a larger council with a range of views as well.
Well, I want to give the example of Marilyn Balcom again, because prior to her announcing and running, she was president of the Germantown Gaithersburg Chamber of Commerce, and she talked specifically about the different transportation needs for up county as opposed to down county, and what might be good for bus rapid transit down in what they call the lower 48. It doesn't work up county where things are further apart and you need roadways. So hopefully there will be this divergence of thought.
Casey, I have never heard Montgomery County divided like that, the lower 48. And does that suggest that Germantown is like Alaska?
Well, no, Clarksburg is like Alaska.
It would also be worthwhile to mention what Kristen Mink said at the inauguration speech. I mean, transparency, business as usual, not inclusiveness in decision making. She's pointing out that we're not going to put up with some of these events of the past. So get your popcorn out, sit down, and let's get ready for some interesting times.
Well, so Cary, let's refine that a little bit. Was she talking about leadership from the county executive or from the council president?
It's from the council members taking polls to make decisions in back rooms rather than have open discussion, including all the members of the council and the public. And Kristen Mink made the point: if we truly believe in equity, then we've got to include these members of the public. And making these decisions in the back room doesn't do that.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen in the next coming months. And the first, the council has already issued its, agenda for the upcoming year. It's going to be interesting to see how they all coalesce together and how well they work together with the county executive. Now, when we come back from this short break, why did Governor Hogan ban TikTok from state-run websites? Stay tuned.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right because a few hours ago in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign, not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. Now anything but lonely.
We had this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure love.
And welcome back. More and more federal and state and local leaders are becoming concerned about the growing technological threat from the Chinese government. U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Mark Warner called upon the Federal Trade Commission to investigate the social media platform after allegations that TikTok engineers and executives in the People's Republic of China repeatedly accessed private data of U.S. users despite claims to lawmakers and others that this data was protected. These revelations undermine the longstanding claims by TikTok management that the company's operations were firewalled from demands of the Chinese Communist Party. Mark, this week, Governor Larry Hogan took steps in conjunction with some other Republican governors to ban not just TikTok, but other Chinese and Russian influenced products and platforms. Why do you take these steps against the social media sites, which many consider harmless entertainment?
Well, TikTok, I will just go to that one in particular. It really is uncanny, the personal data that they're able to pick up in terms of making recommendations to watch it. So there is considerable privacy consideration on that. As for the other sites, I must confess there's kind of a slippery slope there of access to content internationally and whether it's appropriate or not. I will tell you there are plenty of people, I'll probably offend a lot of iPhone users by making the observation, but there are plenty of people who have concerns about Apple and the way in which it arguably has kowtowed to the Chinese government and responded to the Chinese government requests and concerns about that. So the challenge is, and I'm not suggesting remotely that you want to ban Apple products, but I think it's kind of important to make a kind of clear distinction of the unique threat that TikTok has, as opposed to trying to wall off content that comes in from other sources.
Well, I mean, we all know that social media is all pervasive. I mean, all you have to do is think about buying a product, and the next thing you know, Google has a pop-up ad for it. So, I mean, we all know that that social media can, knows what you're thinking and buying in your buying habits. But what is the threat from looking at these sites? And Cary, the stated reason is that the crackdown is the fear that American data is in jeopardy of falling prey to the Chinese government. While TikTok spokesman Brooke Oberwetter criticized the restrictions as largely fueled by misinformation about the company. I mean, there's a real danger that government data is going to be sucked up by these social media sites.
I actually happen to agree with Governor Hogan. I mean, the reality is, as you said, hey, we just bought a sofa the other day, and we were talking about it in the house. And of course, our dear friend listens, Alexa. And then the next thing you know, on Facebook, I get ads from Marlo, from Ashley's and Bob's, and all these new sofas, leather sofas. So, if we don't I mean, China is a commercial. They put themselves into the place of commercialism.
But I guess the next step is not just knowing what your social buying habits are, but how do they use that data to manipulate not our thinking, not our buying necessarily, but our thinking. Mark.
Well, I was going to say, Cary, I'm a Luddite, so I don't use Alexa for exactly that reason, because I don't want all my conversations turned into some kind of a part of some algorithm to do it. But you raise it, obviously it's an important thing. It's a useful tool and some information that is very, very specific and very targeted, and it can be very useful for both marketing, but also for more nefarious, can be stuff that we routinely expose on social media or on internet platforms in general.
And you know something? Never underestimate the power of the economy. Okay, if China can somehow get that data and increase their influence on the buying public towards Chinese companies, you know what? That helps that Chinese government in a whole realm of areas. So,
well, look, I'm a national security devotee, and I recognize the threat that China represents to the United States in Eastern Asia. I mean, I just think that we have to be recognizing that they are not necessarily our friends, they are our adversaries, and we have to treat them as such. But we also they're business partners, and we're going to have to find a way to find a balanced medium of dealing with it. As we go to break into our next topic, I did mention, tongue in cheek, about the need to improve the efficiency of Baltimore City. We're going to have to leave that for another show. Okay. Where we talk about, the ambitious efforts that Governor Moore has to improve the situations in Baltimore City. We're going to go to our final topic right now, and this is one that is really fun for headlines, but you got to really peel the onion back on this. And this is according to the Washington Post. The Maryland Republican Party is at war with itself after Dan Cox's failed governor's race. And for those in maybe Timonium, seppuku means suicide. So you can't commit suicide over and over again, but the Washington Post would sure like to think that we can. And rather than focus on the speculations by the Post, I'm going to ask Mark, who is the secretary of the Maryland Republican Party, what's going on with your party, and is it self-imploding?
Well, by the time this show airs, we may see whether or not I'm still secretary or not. So that's an interesting question. The observation I would make is that, sort of to quote Tolstoy, every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Clearly, the Republicans have done well compared to its numbers over the last several gubernatorial elections. This one was a disappointment.
Well, but aren't we seeing the same tug of war in other states?
Absolutely. There's a kind of
because I mean, what I didn't understand, and I thought Kelly Schultz should have been the nominee for your party. What I didn't understand was why they would break a successful model that had been successful in 2 out of the last 3 elections and go for someone who was so demonstrably extreme.
There was and continues to be great frustration on the part of many Republicans, particularly in the, how shall I say, reddest part of the state, for there to be with Governor Hogan. I mean, Governor Hogan had to reach out to Democrats and independents to get elected. The numbers are such that Republicans alone don't elect very many offices in Maryland. You need to have at least a third or more of your votes coming from someone else. And for many Republicans, the aspiration was to have somebody who was more completely Republican or completely conservative. And obviously the numbers aren't, the numbers represent a challenge to be able to elect someone like that.
Can this ball throw 2 cents in here?
Yeah.
And the bottom line is this, you know, the Republican Party of Connie Morella, Nancy Dasik, Betty Ann Kroenke, these people, they were more moderate. And I mean, Sully Sullivan, I think he's got, Sullivan has a future in county government. You know, we have to be more moderate in nature. If you're gonna allow things, the issues to affect you in ways that make you seem angry, the public doesn't like that. I mean, that's the bottom line. And, you know, that the Republican Party has been leaning in that direction, in my opinion. Now, I know my phone's going to go off the hook, you know, with people disagreeing with me. But, you know, when you push the envelope too far, you're rocking the boat.
I think there's certainly a need, you know, to examine the future of the Republican Party. They did not do well in this election, although with the charismatic nature of Wes Moore, they might not have been able to win with a more moderate candidate anyway. I mean, Governor-elect Moore certainly performed extraordinarily well. So, but I'm going to leave it to Mark to have the last word here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, in Montgomery County, to Cary's point, it's the math is this, that the Republican registration is slightly under 15% now. When Larry Hogan was elected 4 years ago, he got 44% of the vote. Assuming turnout was roughly the same across the board, what that means is that 2/3 of the votes in Montgomery County that Hogan got came from not Republicans, but came from independents and Democrats. And that's, of course, assuming Hogan got all of the Republican votes. That's the kind of challenge of crossover. And in order to get elected statewide, you've got to do much better in Montgomery County than the enrollment figures would allow you to do, because in the reddest parts of the states, they're already at 70, 80%. There's not a lot of voting Republican. There's not a lot of extra votes to be had.
Well, you got to get your votes from the population basis.
Right.
And you got to get your vote from Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, and Baltimore County. Right. Otherwise, you don't have a chance to win. I mean, that's just a fact of life if you want to win statewide. You know, the bigger issue, and we haven't touched on this, we're not going to now, is the lack of competitiveness of Republicans in our own county, and whether there's a hope. Because as Cary mentioned, we did have elected officials on the county council, as state members of the state delegate, but you know, that's been a long time since anyone has been in those positions. So we're gonna have to leave it there. We got to wrap it up. Stay tuned for Parting Shots when we come back from this short break.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
Maybe a hand with that?
Oh, thank you. Did you see anyone's brought this?
Did you lose this?
Thanks for helping us.
No problem.
Is this your bird? You're welcome.
We do anything for kids. Yet 1 in 5 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger near you. Learn how at feedingamerica.org.
And welcome back. Now with Parting Shots, Mark Uncapher.
Well, Casey, we're coming in, as we've already discussed, to sort of a new era. We've got new statewide officials across the board, a new attorney general, a new controller, and of course, a governor and lieutenant governor. As the legislature goes back into session, it's really an opportunity to turn a page. And whether you're Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, or something else, I think we all want to look forward to wish them well and encourage them to kind of work with Marylanders of all stripes. Very often we understand the differences, but actually we share a great deal in common in terms of what our aspirations of our policy are. We may have different perspectives of how to get there, and I hope that we can include those differences of views.
What a nice positive message. Thank you, Mark. Cary Lamari, your parting shot.
My pearls of wisdom. Okay, Thrive is over. It's finished. The council's approved it. We have a new county council sitting in Rockville, and we're entering the holiday season. So my wish for all of you is a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and hopefully civic activism can come back to life in our county. I mean, we can regenerate, civic associations' participation in government, and let's hope that this new council has an open ear, listens to us.
Thank you, Cary.
So, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's all.
Thank you so much. I will point out that earlier this week was the 81st anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and there was barely a mention of it in the Washington Post and in our major media outlets. A great number of people sacrificed their lives that day to make us free, and I think we should never forget the ramifications of that day and try to put it in the context of our foreign policy as we go forward. I want to thank you both for being here today. I want to thank our audience for tuning in to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.